Hi, fellow data geeks, and welcome back to my Introduction to Excel series. In this video, I want to cover the if formula. So eventually we're going to use that if formula to start to build up this data table that we worked on over the last few videos. But this video is just going to cover kind of the basic syntax of the if formula and the kind of things that you can do with it. As you can see, I've already put in some random kind of values over here. So I've just got some random numbers, dates, and then some colors. So what I want to do is take you through how we can use the if statement, the kind of things that we can use it for. And then in our kind of future videos, we'll look at how we do if statements with multiple criteria or multiple if statements, and also things like sum if and count if as well. But to start with, I'm just going to cover the syntax of what this formula looks like. So up here in my formula bar, I'm just going to type equals and if, and then open bracket. So as you can see, Excel tries to kind of give us some help with what the formula should actually be, how the formula should be constructed. So we've got our logical test value comes first, and I'll explain that in more detail in a second. Then comma, value if true, so if our logical test is true, and then our value if false. So let me explain what that logical test kind of looks like. So I'm going to use some of these values I've got over here. So let's start with E1. So as you can see in cell E1, we've got the value of 50. So our logical test could be if E1 equals 50, and then we put in our comma. So that's our logical test. If this cell equals 50, what do we want to happen? So we want the cell that we've put the formula in, we want it to say 50. We put double quote marks around that text, comma, and then our value if true, so we'll just put something else. Okay, so then we close off our formula with our bracket and then hit return. So 50, because E1 equals 50, that's what our formula over here has given us. So if I change E1 to be a different value, so 100, then our cell over here with our if statement in will change, because the logical test is no longer true, it's now false, so it's given us a different value. Again, if I change that back to 50, this will get updated with 50. So exactly the same thing applies over here where we're using dates. So again, I'm going to do equals if, and I want to say if, let me think, so if today, and today is actually kind of a function that's built in with Excel. So today and open bracket, close bracket. So actually, before we go ahead with that, let me just show you what that does. So equals today, open bracket, close bracket, and hit return. So we need to change our cell format to the date. So you can see that gives us actually today's date. So if I want my if statement to say if today, open bracket, close bracket, equals, and we're going to select H1, comma, and I want the cell to display the word today. And if it's not true, then I want it to say another date. Just remember to put the quote marks around that. Okay, and then close bracket. So obviously it equals to, so the formula today equals H1. So that gives us today. If not, it equals another date. So as you can see, if I go into here and change that for another date, our formula over here will be updated to match our false criteria. If I change it back again, that matches here, so that gives us today. And And again, you can have a play around with these, especially with dates and things, depending on what you're trying to achieve. So if H2, so you can actually just select a cell reference, equals, let's try this, equals H1 plus 1, then that's going to give us the date plus 1. Then we want it to be tomorrow. And if not, we want it to say today. Okay, so what we've done here is say if cell H2, which is this one here, with the date of the 5th in, if that equals H1, so our date of the 4th, plus 1, so if we do plus 1 added to a date, so if I show you here as well, equals today, open bracket, close bracket, plus 1, and change our format to date, that will also give us a date for tomorrow. So if we do H1 plus 1 equals to H2, which is our date of the 5th, then say tomorrow. If not, then give us the value of today. So again, if we change some of these numbers, so we can say the 6th, for example, down here, then actually what we're saying is H1 will give us today, not tomorrow. So yeah, lots of kind of different things you can play around with. And again, I'm just going to take some examples here with our colors. So equals if, open bracket, so our logical test, if K1 equals, so we can specify, you know, another cell value, another kind of text, a calculation. There's lots of kind of different things we can do. So what I'm going to do is show you the example of a cell value. So if K1 equals K3, then we can say we want it to populate with the word match. And if it doesn't match, so if our logical test is false, we want to say no match. So close our bracket and hit return, no match, because K1 purple does not equal K3 green. So we've got no match in there. If we change this to purple, obviously our formula then recalculates and updates to say that they are a match. So these are the kind of things that you can use if statements for. The other thing we can do as well is actually to kind of work out some calculations. So we can say, taking our first example here with our numbers. So if we go back and we type in if, so if E1 equals 50, then what we want to do is actually we want to multiply that by 2. So equals 50. Our value, if true, is E1 times by 2. And if it doesn't equal 50, then we want it to just give us the cell value. So we can close that off and hit return. So obviously E1 does equal 50. So our value, if true, is to take that value and then times it by 2 or multiply by 2. And if it doesn't, then we just want it to give us the cell value. So if we go in here and change that to 100, for example, you can see there that stayed at 100. If we type in 150, so you can actually see the formula update, we've now got 150 populated in here. We put it back to 50, we go back to our 100. And you can see there all of our other formulas that we've referenced with these cells are updating as well. So anytime that you make changes to these, the cells that are being referenced, your formulas will get updated. So this is just kind of an example of how we can kind of combine the if statement with some of the other formulas we covered in previous videos. So in this example, the multiplication, which leads us on quite nicely to our data table here that we populated. So in the last video, we started to put some of our formulas that we'd learned around addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. We started to populate this table here. So what we're going to do is start to incorporate some of our if statements into this. So as you can see in this yearly cost last time, if I just double click, it will show you the formula and the references that we had. So what we said last time was to take the monthly value, so our £800, and to times that by 12, because we knew that we have obviously 12 months in the year. However, what we can see is that some of these monthly values are populated and some aren't. So we've got some blanks here in this table. So what I'm going to do is start to add in some of the if criteria around around this formula that we've already put in. So if I want to say if, so because K3 is needed to be able to calculate this, what I'm going to do is select if K3 equals, and I'm going to put a double quote, and that means blank, basically, if it's empty, if there's nothing populated in the cell, and it's completely an empty cell. So if K3 is empty, then we don't want to do our calculation because we know that we don't have a value in here to populate. So what I can do is say that I want it to work out a different calculation, or for now, I'm just going to say, I just want it to populate a blank cell. So that's our value if true, and then our comma, and our value if false then becomes our final original formula that we had in. So I'm going to close the bracket. So what we're saying here is if K3 is blank, then give us a blank cell. If it's not blank, so if we've got a value populated here in K3, then to do our original calculation, which was to do K3, so £800 times by 12. So if I hit return, that gives us our original result we had of 9,600. Now what I can do is start to pull this formula down. So if we make sure, first of all, if you remember from the last video, we always want to reference the cell of M1 to give us our value of 12, so our 12 months. So what I'm going to do is add in the anchors around that. So that fixes the column and the row to M1. However, we've left K3 with no anchors or no dollar signs, which means when we start to pull the formula down, it will move our cells in our formula with us. So if we drop this to here, so as you can see, we've kept M1 where it is, but we're now referencing K4. So our if statement is automatically copied down for us. And it's now saying if K4 is blank, then give us blank. Otherwise, multiply our K4 by the M1. So what we can do is pull that down again, and that's going to calculate all of our values in the table. Okay, so what happens if where we pulled that formula down, if we hover over the bottom right corner of the cell, it gives us this black cross. So that means that we're now free to pull the formula down and to copy it into any of the cells below. So I'm just going to pull it straight over the ones that we've already got values in and pull that formula all the way to the bottom. Now, as you can see, these ones have disappeared. The reason for that, if we double click, so what we're saying is if K7 is blank, then give us a blank result. If not, do the calculation we want. So as you can see, this one isn't populated because it wasn't populated in our original table. We have our yearly cost. So that's why we've ended up with the blank cells here. So as you can see, our if statement now covers the full table. And if we just select another example, so we've got M1 is still referenced at the top. We're saying if our column K row 20 is blank, give us no result, otherwise do our calculation. So that's 30 times by 12, so we end up with 360. So that's just another way that we can use the if formula. And what we need to kind of think about is how we then start to populate these ones, where we do actually have a blank cell in the monthly value. And as you can see in our original table, these are the ones where we had some of the yearly and the quarterly costs populated. So what we'll need to then think about is how we do, how we can pull this formula down. So we have the same formula consistently in all of the cells, but it covers multiple different criteria. So that's something that I will cover separately in a video where we cover just if statements with multiple criteria. What I wanted to cover today was just that basic if formula, the syntax that needs to be used, and how we can use a mixture again of cell references, of typed in kind of text, of populating different values or words, and how we can incorporate that with other formulas. For example, in our original here, where we said, we've got if the first cell equals 50, actually give us the word 50 or something else. We then used our date cells, so we actually incorporated another formula, but giving us again kind of typed in results. And then over here, we had a similar example where we had a formula that was matched, and that gave us the typed in values. What we've done here on our data table is to say, if our logical test is a formula, then actually use our criteria to determine another formula is then calculated. So with if statements, we can kind of use a complete mixture of, cell references, typed in words or values, and also other formulas. So there's a lot that you can kind of achieve with if statements. And what we'll move on to next time is how we take that if statement a step further. So we'll look at things like sum if and count if, how to populate these blank fields that we've got. So if we've got one set of criteria we need to match, but we also then need to match another set of criteria, and how we combine those together. So as I said, I just wanted to kind of cover that basic syntax today. And I will obviously put that up on the screen so that you are able to kind of take note of that. Have a play around with if statements, see the kind of things that you can achieve, and obviously come back and join me for the next video where we'll take the if formulas a step further to cover some of those more kind of advanced options that we've got as well, where we can have multiple ifs built into one formula, and how we can do our sum and our count if as well. So thank you for joining me today. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that you can follow the full series of my introduction to Excel tutorials. And remember to hit that notification bell so you can be alerted of when I put the next video out. So thanks for joining me again, and I will see you on the next one.